so, but
Now
it is Friday afternoon, not Saturday morning, because Saturday morning is for SEC football, at least in my neck of the woods. I'm Zach Berman. This is University's uSTADIUM, or uSTADIUM's University. Week 7 is upon us, and first and foremost, before we get into things, I would like to talk a little bit about a new era, a new chapter of uSTADIUM with the app and with everything that's going on, because we are introducing in the not too distant future a new picks feature to the app, or it's not a picks feature, excuse me, a takes feature to the app, where you're going to be able to put out and argue and vote on some of the hottest takes this side of the Mississippi. For example, a hot take that I put out in the app that got some flack, some coverage last weekend was, would Penn State have won had Sean Clifford not gotten hurt? And I think they would have, but a lot of people seem to think otherwise. Now, I also believe Penn State would beat Iowa in the Big Ten championship game should it come to that point. And Kyle Clifford is, or excuse me, it's just called Kyle Clifford. Sean Clifford. Kyle Clifford, and I made this mistake, was a fourth liner on the Stanley Cup winning Los Angeles Kings back a couple years ago. But to begin with the picks, and first of all, Nick, this is for you. If you've noticed my name, which is that way, I have Army covering this weekend. Now, why do I have Army covering? Army is playing a terrible Wisconsin team. Like, Wisconsin is brutally bad. And a lot of that falls on Graham Mertz just not being a good quarterback. And they're a solid defensive team. But Army's 4-1. Jeff Monken has done a phenomenal job with the program. I don't think he's ever going to leave Army, even though there's definitely Power 5 programs that are pining for him to take a head coaching role. So, game's in Madison tomorrow night, and I'm going to roll with the Black Knights. So give me Army to cover plus 14. I'm not confident enough to say they will flat out win, but they certainly could. So yes, it is in the name. Army will cover. Nick, that's for you. Now, to get on with the rest of my picks, and there are, in a week that is a little bit more toned down than previous weeks, there's not that many crazy picks to put out. I'll start with the game that's taking place in my hometown, one that I will be at tomorrow. And I do have Texas A&M coming off of an upset against Alabama, covering against a god-awful Mizzou team that can't stop the run. What does Texas A&M love to do? Run the ball. The fact the line is only at 8.5, that's free money. Like, that's about as close of a slam dunk contest as you can get. Now, it is worth noting, Texas A&M has had those Aggie letdown games. It has happened at Mizzou before. So it's not a total slam dunk, but it's one that I'm probably more confident in than anything else. Speaking of picks that I'm confident in, I think the Iowa Hawkeyes are due for a letdown. And Purdue has had the history of upsetting really, really good Big Ten teams, which is why I think, although Iowa will win, I think they suffer a bit of a hangover at home, and I think the Boilermakers cover the 11.5. Last but certainly not least, I think Arkansas is going to come out ticked off after the way they lost a week ago to Ole Miss, and I don't think Auburn's very good. I picked Auburn certain occasions earlier this year, but this is just not an Auburn team to me that inspires any confidence. This is not an Auburn team that is going to be able to hang with the big boys. And Arkansas is closer to being a big boy than you might think. So give me the Razorbacks at home to cover the -4.5. Now for the head-to-heads. Let's start with the game of the week. And the spread for this game, Georgia-Kentucky, Georgia is favored by 21, which is by no means disrespectful to the Wildcats. I have sung the praises day after day, week after week of this Kentucky program. I love what Mark Stoops is doing. I love what Will Levis is doing, quarterback. I love their weapons. I love their defense. I love everything UK has put out. But I think this Georgia team, and I'm going to be the first to say it, I think they are historically good, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Quarterback is a bit of a weak spot. I don't think J.T. Daniels or Stetson Bennett are going to blow your mind, rock your world, but you can cover that up with a great offensive line, three-headed monster at running back, and a stupid amount of offensive weapons, both at tight end and wide receiver. And that is why, despite Kentucky maybe covering, I'm going to go Georgia to win the game outright. So give me the Dogs. I think that's a pretty poor impersonation of calling the Dogs at Sanford Stadium. By the way, I will actually, and this is a bit of a self-plug, I will be live at Sanford Stadium to broadcast Missouri, Georgia on November the 6th. I don't know what time the game is yet, but if you want to hear me in my natural habitat, which despite my radio chops with talk radio is play-by-play, if you want to hear me there, I will make sure to have the links as we get closer, but I will be on the mic for Missouri and Georgia from in between the hedges. But you got to pick at least one upset a week. And actually, Vegas does not have this as an upset. But I do think Texas is going to bounce back from, let's be blunt, a complete collapse against Oklahoma. And that's no disrespect to Oklahoma. I think they are a really good team. I think they woke up. But I think the most overrated team and overranked team in the United States of America in college football is the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They're number 12. They also haven't played anybody. So with that being noted, I think Texas will come home in front of DKR and that 100,000 fan base, 100,000 strong seat fan base. Give me the Longhorns to bounce back. I did pick them last week against Oklahoma. They were close. I also think, and this is going to be bold, not only do I think Florida defeats LSU, I think we might potentially be seeing Ed Orgeron's last game as the head coach of Louisiana State. I think not only does LSU lose, I think Ed Orgeron could be fired after this week. So give me the Gators on the road in Baton Rouge. Florida, they're not a great team. They're a good enough team to beat an LSU team that has lost literally everybody. LSU has lost 9 offensive starters that were playing week 1. And that's not even getting into losing Derek Stingley. Keyshawn Boutte is out for the year, their superstar receiver. LSU is banged up, but they're not a good team either. And last but not least, because I got to pick some Pac-12 craziness, I'm going to pick Arizona State over Utah. But yes, Coach O is going to be fired, if not this week, soon after. Who do I think replaces Coach O? I could give you a couple names. One of the most novel ideas is, what if Joe Brady, who, of course, coached Joe Burrow at the quarterback position that 2019 season, now he's the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers. What if he comes back and is the head coach of LSU? But I'll throw other names out. Urban Meyer, which would be something. Even a guy like, I don't know, maybe, shoot, who would you like to see coach LSU? I'll put it out in the app. Curious to see what y'all think. But I think that Joe Brady could come back and absolutely crush the job. And as for Coach O, I don't think he's that great of a head coach. Like, I really think he was gifted an incredible team. Joe Brady worked magic with Joe Burrow. And he had, Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, Justin Jefferson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and you have all these guys on the defensive side of the ball. There was nothing I'd ever seen like it, really, until Alabama the next week or the next season. But I think Ed Orgeron does not stick around. They're saying that Jimbo Fisher could leave A&M. There's no way that happens. I'm sorry. There's also no way that James Franklin leaves Penn State except for maybe USC. LSU Tigers Wire at USA Today is saying Lane Kiffin, I don't know if he leaves Ole Miss, and Luke Fickell sure as heck is not leaving Cincinnati. Oh boy, Bill O'Brien takes a job at LSU. I am so sorry. Ooh, Kellen Moore. Would Kellen Moore leave the NFL where he's likely going to get a head coaching job for LSU? I don't think so. Last but not least, like I said, Arizona State or Utah. I was wrong on the Sun Devils last week. I think they are really, really, really flying under the radar. I'm not as high on the Oregon Ducks as I was at the start of the year. I don't think Anthony Brown is really the guy at quarterback. I think he's a bit of a weakness. And once Oregon gets a quarterback, another Justin Herbert or Marcus Mariota type, I will be higher back on the Ducks. But right now, another hot take. Arizona State is going to win the Pac-12. And ASU is going to represent the Pac-12 conference in the Rose Bowl. They're not making the playoff, but Arizona State and the Sun Devils, Herm Edwards is going to will his team through the muck of the Pac-12. And I do think the Sun Devils wind up defeating Oregon or whoever the heck they wind up playing in the Pac-12 championship game, and ASU is going to take on the Rose Bowl. So, yeah, I will put that cards on the table right now. Push all my chips to the center. As for week-to-week analysis, look for a potential trap game for Michigan State. That's an early game against Indiana, 11 o'clock Central Standard Time, 12 midday. I think Michigan State has been played close a couple times. I think they'll be played close again, even though I don't think Indiana is good enough to win. Look for another potential blowout in Cincinnati UCF. Cincinnati is legitimately like SEC Big Ten caliber, just hiding out in the American Athletic Conference. I can't wait until the Bearcats get to the Big 12 because they might run that conference almost instantaneously as long as they're not in there at the same time as the last years of Texas, Oklahoma. So to go back through those picks before we get into the other storylines of the day, Georgia over Kentucky, hook 'em horns over Oklahoma State. The Gators will chomp LSU and will result in Ed Orgeron being fired in the not-too-distant future and forks up, baby, over Utah. Make that the Pac-12 winning forks up Arizona State Sun Devils. UCF is going to beat, I take that back. Cincinnati is going to beat UCF. I've already gone over Georgia. I've already gone over Iowa. BYU and Baylor. That is an interesting game. 2 5-1 teams. BYU has been decimated by injuries. Baylor, surprisingly, still 5-1, a mediocre 5-1, but still your record is what it says you are. I think I'm botching the living crap out of the Bill Parcells quote. No, you are what your record says you are. And in the battle of 2 5-1 teams, I do think the home field advantage factors into play. The Baylor Bears win at home. Saturday night, tomorrow night, Mississippi State will host Alabama, and I think Alabama is going to take out every ounce of anger on those poor Mississippi State Bulldogs. That one's not even going to be close. But even though I don't think this Crimson Tide team is very good, we know Alabama's tendencies to fall down and get back up. They could still make the playoff. They're likely going to run the SEC West as long as they don't lose another game. So Tide roll in Starkville. And you do feel for the Bulldogs because they're going to get a lot of anger taken out on them. A game that has some intrigue and a potential upset spot here. Ole Miss is going to Knoxville to take on the 4-2, surprisingly 4-2 Tennessee Volunteers. Ole Miss had that nice win last week over Arkansas, but the Vols might have turned over a new leaf. I'm not confident enough to say this is going to be an upset, but I am confident enough to say that it's going to be closer than people think. Vegas is begging you to take Ole Miss here. Like, Vegas is absolutely begging you to take Rebels -2.5. I'm not so sure. What I am sure of is that betting the over is just about the easiest decision you could make in this game. So bet the over tomorrow night in Knoxville. I think that's also the checker game for Mississippi State, Tennessee. NC State and Boston College, 2 surprising 4-1 teams out of the ACC. And I think that Boston College's surprise run continues. I think BC wins. I also think Oklahoma really starts to get a grip on things. I think Caleb Williams is the answer. And I think that the Sooners roll against TCU tomorrow night in primetime. ASU and Utah, I've already gone over that one. I've already gone over A&M and Missouri. And there are a couple interesting games tonight worth noting. Clemson and Syracuse. Boy, would I like to see Syracuse win that game. I don't think they're there yet. And they've done it before on a Friday night. Clemson was actually the number 2 team in the land when they were knocked off by the Orange on a Friday night in the Carrier Dome. But I think Clemson wins close, like real close, like maybe even a field goal at the last second. I also think Oregon doesn't look too hot against a bad Cal team, and I think we're going to have some questions about the Ducks. Oregon will win, but it's going to be an ugly enough performance where I think they're going to get dropped out of the top 10 as a result. Oregon is number 9 in the nation. San Diego State, a sneaky 5-0 against San Jose State. I'll just go off of my gut and say that San Diego State wins. Okay, who will have a superb performance tomorrow? Let me think here. I'm so tempted to give the same few answers every week. Oh, it's going to be Bijan Robinson. But a guy that I'm willing to say is going to make a name for himself. Give me Hendon Hooker, the quarterback for the Tennessee Volunteers. Hendon Hooker has put together a quietly really, really, really good season. In his last 3 games, against Florida, he threw for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Against Mizzou, 225 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Completion percentage of 79%. And then against South Carolina, 225 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Boy, can also run. He's run for touchdowns his last 2 games, and I think Ole Miss's defense is suspect as all heck. So, pencil it down for a breakout performance tomorrow. Hendon Hooker at Tennessee, a senior. I think he's going to make a name for himself. On the defensive side of the ball tomorrow, I was going to say Kayvon Thibodeau, but remember, he is suspended for the first half of tonight's game because of that targeting call that he was gifted in the Stanford loss. Who on defense is really going to show out? Honestly, you could name anybody on Georgia, and they're going to be that good. It's that dog defense is just absolutely unbelievable. They gave up a touchdown for the first time in a calendar month against Auburn last weekend. Like, that is ridiculous. They went almost an entire month without giving up a TD. And I keep on looking at this Georgia. The fact that Kentucky is 6-0 and has knocked off several good to great SEC teams, and they're coming into this game favored to lose by 21.5. I mean, the Dogs are just that good. Like, this might be the best defensive college football team since you might have to go back to like some of those early 2000s Miami teams. Like, Georgia is that remarkable. Every single player on the Georgia defensive side of the ball. And Henry, you can put this down right now because I'm confident of this too. Maybe not this year because obviously some of them are younger than others. Every single player that is starting on the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs will be drafted into the NFL at some point. Not undrafted. Every starter on this roster on defense is going to be drafted at some point in the next few years. They're that good. Like, you have to just watch it. If you're a defensive nerd, you watch it. Everybody is just quick to the ball. They're well coached. Kirby Smart has done a phenomenal job with this defense, and I think it's going to show out in the NFL. It's going to be almost the inverse of what we've seen with the 2020 Alabama team or the 2019 LSU team, where those entire offenses made it on. But if you like defense, like Adam Anderson was coming in, he's a star edge rusher for the Dogs. He came into this maybe as a late first round, early second round pick. He could be a top 10 pick by the end of the season. It's a kind of team where almost everybody that is eligible is going to have their stock go through the ceiling. As for some of the unranked games, this is a bit of a lame week. And what do I say about lame weeks? It's always the weeks that you don't think they're going to be good are great. Now, I also I knew last week was going to be crazy. I didn't think it was going to be A&M beating Alabama, Texas blowing a 21-point lead, that kind of weekend. But alas, it was. So we dive into the FBS just in general, and what do we have here? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's see if a game spots my eye. Do we see Yale beat UConn in the battle of Connecticut FBS schools? Maybe we do. I'd love to see it. That's an 11 a.m. kick Central Standard Time. Does UConn get their first win against an Ivy League school? Give me Yale. I think that'd be fun to watch. Yale is the Harvard Central Connecticut UConn. Hey, don't do my boys at Southern Connecticut State like that. I know they're D3, but don't do them like that. What other games catch my eye? The battle of mediocre ACC schools with much higher expectations. Miami and North Carolina. Sam Howell, he and Spencer Rattler had these insane expectations. Both of their expectations have dropped significantly. Both have underperformed. I think UNC wins because UNC is mediocre. Miami is terrible. There's a huge difference. So I'm going to take the U and I'm going to flip it over and down because Manny Diaz is also going to be fired in the not too distant future. I've used that phrase a lot, not too distant future. You know what else is going to happen in the not too distant future? Arizona is going to win a football game. Does a U down make half of an M? Well, we're really asking the hard-hitting questions today. Yeah, it does. Michigan is off this week. Could Arizona beat Colorado? Battle of 0-5 and 1-4. Jeez. Oh, man, that is a rough game. What is a good game, though, is Fresno State and Wyoming. Jake Haener, he's played himself into the top QB category. I love what he has done. Look for him to potentially crack the first round of the NFL draft. Jake Haener of Fresno State, or as Ted Robinson, one of the play-by-play guys for the Pac-12 network, called him a natural. Want to know what else is a natural pick here? That was a terrible transition. But I'm also going to pick Nevada over Hawaii. I think Carson Strong has really started to be a strong candidate for a first-round pick. I've heard his name a gazillion times. He's starting to show out. I like what he's doing. Hope he keeps on keeping on. Otherwise, Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech. If Virginia Tech loses this game, this might spell the end for Justin Fuente. He's also going to have to be fired at the end of the season. I don't know when. Justin Fuente reminds me a lot of, as a Mizzou guy, Barry Odom. Someone that is definitely a good person, just a wrong fit for a program that deserves better and coach that happens to lose a lot of games that he shouldn't lose. Now, what is my terrible stay away game of the week? So there's a couple of them. Miami, North Carolina could be one. But yeah, I'm going to go back to that Arizona-Colorado game because that game is just dreadful. 1-4 and a team that can't score versus 0-5 and a program that's not very alive. So I think Colorado could pull it off. Don't be surprised if Arizona wins, but that's just a brutal. That's such a bad game. But like I have said, this is a week where not much is going on, which brings me to what might be the inaugural college football version of uSTADIUM Takes. I'm going to start, and I'm going to do this once a week, starting on Saturday. And for the lesser weeks of college football, I'll have the votes up. For the better weeks, it's going to be during the week. There's a very special kind of college football fan, and that would be the fashion police. So we're going to vote on jerseys, and I'll do every conference, every Power 5 conference, and then one bracket of the 12 best or 12 or 14 best group of 5 or independent jerseys. So we're not leaving Notre Dame out. We're not leaving those beautiful royal blue BYUs out. But I'm going to pick the best jersey from each team and pit it against each other. I don't know how. Do we go random seeding? Do we go just, do we seed them based on like history or looks or this or that? But we're going to figure that out, and I'll have the vote up maybe even tonight. So keep an eye on that, because we are going to determine one of the hardest things that's ever been determined. Actually, I don't think it's ever been determined. What is the best jersey in college football? And if you have any ideas for future categories, let me know. I'm thinking mascots at some point, stadiums at some point. There's a whole lot to work with. And it's also going to carry us through some of these weaker weeks or the off season or dog days of summer. But like I have mentioned, it's not a particularly strong week, which kind of makes me want to wrap the show up early. But at the same time, I want to go off of some of last week's more outlandish reactions, because a lot happened last week as we dive back into the scores. And before I get into last week, I just want to say you can flash the definition. Coastal Carolina is unfortunately on their bye week. So the Chanticleers, there you go, will be resting up ahead of their second half of the schedule. What are my hottest takes to come out of last week? I think Arkansas is a better team than Ole Miss. I know that Ole Miss won the game. I'm not sold on them. I think Ole Miss could lose to Tennessee. I think what they did against Alabama was pretty humiliating. I'm not sold on the Rebels. I'm more sold on the Hogs. And I think Arkansas is going to show that if they beat Auburn, and I also think Ole Miss is going to show that if they have a tough time with Kentucky. I also think Texas is not back, even though I think they're going to win this weekend. I'll go horns down, but Boomer Sooner. OU is alive and well under Caleb Williams. But where does Spencer Rattler transfer? Because I don't think he's going to go to the NFL draft anymore. His stock has absolutely plummeted. His stock has plummeted like, geez. Stock has plummeted like the state of the Houston Texans franchise. It has just fallen like a stone. And I don't think he's going to be eligible as a first-round pick. Nobody's going to draft him in the first round. What is the best spot for Spencer Rattler? I think he'd be a Pac-12 school. Oregon, that's a possibility. They could use a QB. We know what he's capable of. There's just something clearly going on behind the scenes at OU, and he's not playing up to his potential. Most underrated quarterback in the country, that would be Peyton Thorne of Michigan State, excuse me. Peyton Thorne's been putting up numbers, and I think that Mel Tucker has done a phenomenal job. Sparty is relevant again, and I love it. And Peyton Thorne is only a sophomore, too, so he's going to grow into that role with Michigan State. Look for him to be a mainstay for a long time in Lansing. East Lansing, excuse me. Lansing is just the capital. East Lansing is where the college is. Is Ohio State back? Because I think they're scary again. Ohio State, C.J. Stroud has finally figured it out. C.J. Stroud is finally showing why he was picked to quarterback this team, why he was picked to start in last week's dismantling of Maryland. Now, the Big Ten East is going to have a gauntlet weekend. Is Cade McNamara enough for the Wolves to go the distance? Too soon? Oh, there we go. Is Cade McNamara the answer? I think he's certainly better than most quarterbacks that Michigan has had. Can he take them to Ohio State? Get back to me on that after Halloween, because Halloween weekend, you have Penn State and Ohio State, and you have Michigan and Michigan State, and both of those are de facto elimination games. So I'm going to actually say that Cade McNamara could be the answer. And Michigan, even though they've won some close games, maybe they could go all the way. Maybe. Don't take my word on that yet. Now, who do I think is the worst team out of the four remaining Big Ten East schools? Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State. If Sean Clifford is not himself, which I don't think he will be, I foresee a lot of tough days in Happy Valley coming up, because Penn State's got to play the gauntlet. They had to win that Iowa game. They can still run the table and make the playoff, but they're going to have to go through Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan in a very short span. And if they have to play with their backup quarterback who couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a football, I foresee some tough times coming up for that program. Why in the world did Penn State decide to start Clifford over Will Levis? Because Will Levis is making them regret a lot of decisions down in Lexington, Kentucky. If you have any other questions, I'm all ears, but I got to keep thinking here. Is there anything else super outlandish, exciting? People that I think will get fired. I got to keep thinking. Yeah, it's that kind of week in college football. There's not really this huge overarching storyline. Keep an eye on the Georgia game. Keep an eye on the Texas game. Hopefully my beloved Mizzou Tigers will not get blown out, but they probably will if they do. If they win tomorrow, I think our show next week is going to be a lot of fun because I haven't gotten the chance to go full MIZZOU on you, the viewer, yet. But until next week, because I'll be back Monday, not Sunday, Monday. Enjoy your college football Saturday. Enjoy NFL Sunday. Enjoy hockey. Enjoy baseball. It's the best sports time of the year. I mean, is there any time sports better than middle of October when you have everything going on at once? No, there isn't. NBA starts soon. Everything's going on right now. I love the fall, and I'm not just saying that because my birthday was yesterday. So we will see you on Monday. Until then, we'll see you in the app for these takes and for this uniform bracket. So until then, see you around.